right, and we're live, guys. Welcome to the 7th episode of Reactionary Opinions. Goodness me, we're running away with episodes over here. This will actually be the last episode that I will be recording in the United States. I'm in sunny San Diego. Not quite sunny. It's been raining for the last 2 days, so it's a little bit miserable. But yeah, we're going to have a fantastic show today. Dylan's here. How's it going, Dylan?
Doing very well. I'm just enjoying my water and my guilty secret cigarette, so I'm doing great.
Russell, what's going on there? How's Cape Town?
Yeah, it's great. Enjoying a good public holiday. I ran a half marathon this morning, and yeah, just sitting back here, had a bit of a rested up the rest of the day, and yeah, just sitting back and having a chat with you guys.
Russell's taking the fighting degeneracy to the next level, where he maintains his fitness to be like that of an Olympiad.
Straight up Ubermensch Russell over here.
Yeah. Straight up Ubermensch Russell over here.
Well, definitely, he doesn't buy in a body positivity, and his actions speak louder than words. So.
His guns speak the loudest.
Beautiful at any size, right?
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fantastic show for you today. The discussion, or the topic of discussion today, is a very hot button, both in South Africa and the US, and pretty much all over the world. Today, we're going to be talking about the hot topic of dun, 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 immigration. Is it worthwhile? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are there good points to it? Are there bad points to it? What are the bad points? What are the good points? Etc. Etc. So before we go into the history of immigration, I need to put this out there. I am extremely pro-immigration. Okay. My beautiful wife is an immigrant to South Africa. My wife is a visa-holding, perfectly legal immigrant in South Africa. Okay? That's the vital difference. I don't have a problem with immigration. What I do have a problem with is rampant immigration. So sort of open borders and all of that. Call me a conservative redneck, but yeah, I do have a problem with rampant immigration. The United States, some actual interesting facts about the United States. I'm just going to read you a line over here that I've pulled up about the United States. So the United States has a larger immigrant problem than any other country. Get this, with 47 million immigrants as of 2015. That represents 19.1% of the 244 international immigrants worldwide and 14.4% of the US population. Now, wow, those are some serious numbers to take into consideration. But here's the thing, some other countries have a larger proportions of immigrants, such as Switzerland with, get this, 24.9%, and Canada with 21.9%. Now, that to me is a shocker. Now, a lot of people will argue and say, well, you know, you need immigrants to build your economy and, you know, to, I guess, to populate your country. I don't know. I don't know why you would need so many. But yeah, there are some fair arguments to be made when it comes to, you know, legal immigration, and when it comes to, you know, immigration or vetted immigration or skilled immigration, which is a good thing. You do need skilled immigrants. You do need a ton of them if you are a developing and a growing country. So you do need those sort of things. However, I do have a problem with rampant illegal immigration. Now, this is the difference. There's a big difference between legal immigration and illegal immigration. Now, that might sound like I'm being stupid over here by saying, oh, no shit, there's a big difference. There's obviously a big difference. But a lot of people don't understand that there is a clear difference between legal immigration and illegal immigration. Now, in order for my wife to, she's still not technically immigrate, or she's still not a citizen or even a resident in South Africa. It's a lengthy procedure to get her to become a citizen or a resident of South Africa. And we're busy with that procedure. Dylan should know that firsthand, right?
Yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah, it's a lengthy procedure. But we're busy with the procedure, and it takes time and all of that. So this is the whole thing. When it comes to illegal immigrants, okay, or illegal immigration, most of the times you'll find when people immigrate illegally, because you've got to ask yourself this question: why is someone immigrating to another country? Whether it's in my case, my wife, I'm married to my wife, legally married to my wife, and we live in South Africa because we couldn't live in Peru, where she's from, because I'd be unable to work. Okay, so that's the reason why my wife is immigrating to South Africa. She's a tax-paying immigrant. She pays tax. She doesn't benefit from any of the welfares or the welfare setups that we have in South Africa. She doesn't benefit from any of them in any way, shape, or form, even though she still pays tax. Most of the time, you'll find illegal immigrants will immigrate to a country to abuse the welfare state. Especially in Europe, you find there's a lot of rampant immigration, people going into parts of Europe to abuse the welfare state. Is it in the UK or something where they get given, I think it's something ridiculous, like £1,600 a month or something to live on. Right, Russell? That was Chris. It was our friend from Ireland that was telling us about that, something like that.
Yeah, look. Also, England, specifically England, has had ridiculous amounts of immigration as well. The last 15 since like 2000, 2001, the levels of immigration into what is known as England, rather than Scotland and Ireland and Northern Ireland. Well, Ireland's a different country. They've also had mass immigration as well. But England specifically is the most densely populated area of Europe, I think, at the moment. And pretty much the guys in the Brexiteers like Nigel Farage, etc., they're 100% right. I mean, the bus over there is pretty much full, just geographically and everything. That's why Brexit happened. Blue collar workers are your traditional, what would be your workers that would vote Labour Party. Many of them actually voted to leave the European Union simply so that they could control their borders. But yet their own party that's supposed to be looking after workers' affairs the last 60-odd years, 70, 80 years in the UK, the Labour Party has sold them out. You know what I mean? So many of them voted for Brexit.
So I guess the logical argument for sort of rampant immigration and stuff would be something in the lines of, well, they're potentially sort of seeking asylum, and it's women and children. How could you be so inconsiderate, and how could you be such a dick about it? And
look,
there's that argument.
When you look at those videos, remember in 2015, all those waves of immigrants coming in from Turkey into Europe, coming across Europe through the Balkan states, through Hungary or into Austria and Germany. There's just waves of those guys walking. I never saw very many women and children, those military-age men, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
It wasn't women and children. I saw very few women and children. It was all military-age men between the ages of 18 and 35. And that's the problem, You can't, you just cannot, if that's one of the controls has got to come in on immigration, even if it is asylum seekers, you at least got to take in family units. You cannot take in, one of the things you just simply cannot allow into your country in an asylum situation is single men. That's the worst. They have to be part of a family
men with a family or something.
Yeah. Young single men on welfare. What could go wrong?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, no, you basically, you are really asking for trouble. You can still have asylum seekers, but have them vetted in the country So if they, for instance, from Syria, you set up a situation in Syria where you vet them, you vet them there, then they can have a safe asylum to Germany, for instance, as a family unit, not as single military age men.
You know what really irritates me, Russell, is when people start talking about things like open borders and all of that. Now, so no borders, Russell, Dylan, you've heard the arguments for.
Well, look, I'm not completely against I'm not completely against open borders, but there's certain criteria. You know, a country like England or the whole United Kingdom can't have open borders because they've got a welfare state. You know, they've got minimum wage laws and they've got a welfare state. You simply cannot have a open borders situation in a case like that. And so basically, your conditions for having open borders means no public services, in other words, full private healthcare and education, all right? No minimum wage laws, no social welfare. Then you can have open borders.
Or at least, I guess, you know, the people that your immigrants that came in through those so-called open borders would not be entitled to those things.
No. Look, I mean, the thing is, no, you just don't have them. You just don't have them. Your local guys.
Well, then it wouldn't really attract those kind of immigrants anyway.
Exactly. That's the whole idea. So all open borders are fine, but if people in Germany, you know, these fanatics, these leftists in England and these sort of places, no, open borders, it's good, it's righteous, we're kind people, we're good people, it's virtuous. Okay, you can't have your welfare state, you can't have your NHS, you can't have your welfare, you can't have that, must all go. That's my feeling on it. If you've got all these public benefits, welfare and a minimum wage laws and all these sort of social benefits, close the borders.
Well, I think you're right there, Russell, because then what would actually happen is you'd attract quality people who are looking to, you know, actually, you know, build something, and instead of, you know, wanting to abuse the welfare state or the welfare system and stuff. So then what you'd actually attract is potentially, well, I think what would more than likely happen is you'd attract young married professionals with families and kids and stuff.
Correct. They're able to reach the required levels of production. Look, I mean, the thing is, from about the late 19th century right up until end of the Second World War, around there somewhere, America effectively had look, I know from about the end of the Civil War at least until about 1900. Dylan might be able to correct me here, but essentially America had open borders, if I'm not mistaken. Dylan?
Yeah, the United States, there was no real restrictions on immigration in the United States from basically the founding of the country until the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882.
Oh, yes.
There was a lot of Chinese in California, and for various reasons, some of them good, some of them bad, most of them bad. They had an exclusion for Chinese immigrants, which basically meant Chinese labor could only contractually stay in the U.S. and for 10 years. So they didn't say you can't come, it's just you have to go back after 10 years, and there was no naturalization process for Chinese people.
So they were essentially migrant workers.
Yeah. So it was basically treat them like migrant workers. And then in 1903, they had another immigration act where they said, I thought this was funny, no anarchists, beggars, epileptics, or importers
of prostitutes,
or importers of prostitutes. It was very clear. It said importers of prostitutes, not prostitutes. Yep. So I don't know.
So you're allowed. Prostitutes were allowed in, but you weren't allowed to import prostitutes.
Of prostitutes, yes. I don't know how they would find that out.
If you were a prostitute, you were welcome. But if you imported prostitutes, it's a problem.
Exactly.
Yes, that's
funny. And And then in 1924, that was when you first started getting some more hard and fast quotas of national origin. Before that, you had some restrictions. I think you had restrictions on people from Asia. More generally speaking, that included some Slavs. I know some Russians had trouble getting into America at this time. And I think it's interesting to note historically what's going on. Right around this time with the Immigration Act of 1924 in the early 1900s, what you had was a situation where mobility of people was significantly higher than it had been. So in early Republic of the United States, you had a situation of no immigration controls, barring quarantine at ports and stuff for illness. But the other thing too is you can have open borders, but who was going to come really? I mean,
well, if you have open borders, like Russell said, with no welfare state and stuff, then people will generally not flood in.
That, and the other thing too is the cost to go on a ship from the old world to the Americas at the time was extremely high, and it took a long time. You'd have to uproot yourself, and you sort of had a selecting out process just due to the economic costs of leaving. And of those who did end up coming to the U.S., almost all of whom were European, 40% of them ended up going back to their country of origin because they didn't like it. So, and there was a big incentive to have people coming to America at the time because they had all this land, but it wasn't peopled. So the way the government looked at it was, well, west of the Mississippi, we have all this land that we've gotten from France, or
that was the policy of westward expansion by Ulysses S. Grant, right?
Yeah, and the Monroe Doctrine, Manifest Destiny, the Western Hemisphere is our hemisphere, and so we want to. I mean, you have basically a bunch of useless land for all intents and purposes as far as the government's concerned, and well, if we want to get revenue from it, we want it to be worth something. We want the United States to become a more powerful and important country, a big player on the world stage. What do you need to do? You need to turn that fallow land into resource-bearing, productive use. So that was part of the reason for the ramped-up immigration.
But was it, Dylan, was it, there was no, apart from obviously the land story and stuff, there was no, you know, state incentives for immigrants coming to the US, were there?
No, none. There was no real welfare benefits at all until the 1930s with Social Security.
So the people that came there knew that they were going to have to work their bloody asses off in the middle of nowhere to try and make land, you know, that was absolutely fallow, like you say, to produce, you know, goods, farm goods, cows, whatever it is. They knew they were going to have to slave their asses off to get anything done.
Yeah, that's true. But you also saw restrictions in 1924, like I was saying, national origin quotas. And I think it's partially what we're talking about. The federal government at that point had more or less, the West had been closed. The land was peopled. And so I think common opinion at the time amongst Americans was, okay, we have enough, you know, so we're kind of good. We could sort of let it trickle in, assimilate, close the borders, open them up, close them, assimilate, that sort of thing. But yeah. And then in 1965, you had the Immigration and Nationality Act, which basically repealed national origin quotas, introduced visas for family and skilled workers, and imposed quotas on Western Hemisphere countries and it opened up places that had previously not had lots of immigration to the United States. And that's when you started getting more interesting cultural problems in terms of immigration and assimilation. An interesting example of open borders immigration in practice was actually Texas. I don't know if you guys know, but
don't mess with Texas.
Yeah,
Texas elected to join the union, right?
That is right. So what actually ended up happening is Mexico owned Texas. It was part of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And basically their thought was, well, we need Texas. There's not a lot going on in Texas, so how about let's incentivize some American farmers and ranchers and stuff to come here, miners. And then you had a lot of legal and illegal immigration coming to Texas. And then before Mexico knew it, basically, there was too many Americans in Texas. And then at that point, they're like, what? Why are we part of Mexico? So then you had the Texas independence, and then that broke off. And then the Republic of Texas was technically its own country for a while, only several years before joining the United States. That was always the intent with Texas secession from Mexico, was to try and get it to become eventually part of the United States. But this is, over the past year or so, I've kind of, not altogether, but I've somewhat soured on immigration a little bit, even legal immigration in large numbers, because if you look at it from Mexico's perspective, you had land, you invite foreigners in, there becomes too many of them come in, and then next thing you know, they break off a huge chunk of your country. So, and of course, there's the Indian factor. American Indians, they come in, and then inevitably you have clashes between farmers and then tribal hunter-gatherer people, and so.
Well, Dylan, the question is, I think, a lot of people ask is whether your culture is worth preserving. I think that's the whole thing, and a lot of people that are anti sort of culture and they say, oh, you as a country, you can't sort of preserve your culture, so what's the point? And there's that question that you need to ask, and I don't think people are asking that question is because rampant immigration definitely dilutes culture. I'm sorry, I don't care what anyone says. I mean, if you look at what's that place on the coast?
That's racist, man. I heard you saying you have a right to defend your people.
That's racist.
That's racist.
So listen, Russell, if you look at videos of that place in England on the coast, I think it's Blackpool or something, and you look at I saw a video of the pier of Blackpool, and it's I mean, okay, yeah, call me a racist, whatever, but there's not it's all just like Muslim people all over that entire pier. You'd swear you were in the Middle East there. I mean, and that doesn't concern you as an English person. I mean, I don't know. People are going to lambaste me and tell me I'm being racist, but that's just, I mean, isn't that strange?
One of the things as well, which I hate about. Now I've got a love-hate relationship with all things British, There's a lot of things that I've always enjoyed, and there's a lot of things that I hate. But you must remember, in Britain, with their class divide, the ones that are the ones that have got the biggest mouths on immigration are not the ones that have to deal with the problems. The ones that are your public school puffs, living in the nice areas and all that sort of thing. They're the ones promoting immigration, saying that it's good and everything. Meanwhile, the blue working collar guys, your average Joe, he's he can't put his kids in school because it's full of Somalis, and there's no space for their kids to go to school there, So in Britain, there's a lot of animosity between classes there, where the one group doesn't have to deal with anything, and the other group has got has to deal with the problems.
But Russell, is noticing and speaking about these sort of issues and stuff that you just mentioned and that I just mentioned, is that racist?
Oh, that's racist.
I'm asking you. Like, I'm saying,
no. Well, look, like I said, it's a reality. Look,
so for example, Russell, this is my issue. Okay, let's say, for example, I grew up in Blackpool in the UK, which is what I'm just talking about. Okay, I grew up my entire life there. Okay, 37 years of my life in this little town called Blackpool. Okay, it's not quite little, but anyway. So you grew up your entire life, and before your eyes, you saw your entire community change within the space of 10 years. Okay, now I've got kids, okay, who I want a future for, and I want my kids to have my culture and my future and my beliefs and all of that.
Yeah, of course you want that.
You can tell me I'm indoctrinating them or whatever.
Of course, no. Of course you want that.
But that's what I want.
That's what parents want.
I want a good life for my kids, the same upbringing that I had when I was 10 years old or whatever. I want my kids to have the same thing. Now I see this changing around me over here, and I think to myself, I say, well, hang on, what's going on here? Is this normal? You know, is my culture now? Does my culture have a future? And is it wrong? There are people that would argue that it's wrong to say I want to preserve my culture for the future of my family.
Oh, that's racist. No. Look, I don't think. Look, I don't think it's a. This is the whole problem. Yeah, I don't believe that that level and that mass type of immigration is any type of strength to any community or nation anywhere. You can't tell me that increasing the diversity of a nation is a strength.
But Russell, diversity is a strength.
No, it's not a strength. That's nonsense. That
diversity is what makes
anything
great.
No, diversity is good. Diversity is a strength. Diversity is what makes Blackpool so peaceful.
I mean, what you're talking about, Scott, it's definitely not racism. What you're talking about is nationalism, right? It's the feeling that you like where you come from, you like your culture, you like your faith, you like your language, and you want to see it preserved. That's all it is. And
don't say that to a libertarian. They'll lose their shit. Oh, you're a nationalist. You're basically a Nazi.
I didn't say national socialist, guys. Relax. But I mean, really, so where was I? I derailed myself. But anyways, yes, immigration. So the pros of immigration, of course, I think in terms of economics, they're fairly well understood. If you even look at, despite all the social ramifications, South Africa, US, lots of places have benefited greatly from certain amounts of immigration. The immigrants bring with them, provided you get the ones who have something to offer in terms of economics, bring a lot to bear in terms of expertise, money making, and they can sort of help develop your country. That this happened in Singapore, this happened in South Africa, this happened in the US, it's happened in lots of places. But I think one thing that I was thinking about was, and this is why I'm not against all immigration ever in all circumstances, obviously. You know, I mean, I'm here, but the way I see it is, I know I'm a welcome guest in the community I'm in, right? They want me here. They wanted me in Mitchell's. They wanted me in Mitchell's Plain, and they want me in Summerlin. You know, so no, seriously, you know, I fit in. I consider myself a guest, and I behaved like one. People liked having me around. I married a local. It's fine. But I think, okay, what would happen if, for whatever reason, 10,000 or 100,000 Alaskans all of a sudden start moving in mass, you know, to Mitchell's Plain, and what's that going to do? You know, it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thought. Or here's an easier one. So you have Iceland, right? All of a sudden, you fill Iceland with a bunch of Japanese people. Is that Iceland anymore?
No.
And right. I mean, it's not. And the Icelandic people would probably feel somewhat disappointed and angry and might, at a certain point, get violent in that sort of situation because they feel rationally that their way of life is under threat in sort of an existential way. And we see this happen a lot in history, right? So England used to be populated by the Celts. Then the Anglo-Saxons came in, no more Celts, or they got absorbed and their culture and language is gone, basically. The Roman Empire was a thing, and then a bunch of Germans came in and messed everything up, as they like to do. And and then, you know, Rome is it's whatever it was, it's not there anymore. Even a lot of the German tribes who came in, the Goths, the Franks, as distinct people groups, they no longer exist. We see this happen a lot in history, and sadly, we're seeing this happen. I hope it doesn't happen, but with the Native Americans in the United States, and particularly in Alaska. Alaska's got as a proportion of the population, not absolute numbers, but a proportion of the population, you have the highest, I think it's maybe 10% of the total Alaskan population is Alaska Native. And a lot of their languages are going extinct. And I think it's basically, you know, largely due to the massive amount of English speaking, the hegemony of English in the area and Western values. And you're having kind of a crisis of identity. A lot of these communities, you have poverty, drug abuse, and tons of suicide. Like suicide amongst Alaska Natives is extremely high. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that their entire cultural identity, which is based largely on subsistence and whatnot, is kind of irrelevant in the modern world, and they don't know quite how to deal with it.
Absolutely.
So and you know, as a Christian, you know, I see some benefits to this. You know, we can give them medicine, Christianize them. I'm all for that. You know, I'm a Christian imperialist, not a cultural imperialist.
God wills it.
God wills it. And the Russian missionaries to Alaska were very conscientious of this. Partially, I think, because Russians in general, compared to some of the British missionaries that would come later, were they had sort of a nationalist ethos themselves. And they wanted the Aleuts to keep what was being good about Aleut, you know, some of the tribes in southwestern Alaska. But the gospel was a fulfillment of the good things about their culture. And they didn't want them to modernize or tamper with the way they lived. They just wanted to sort of bring them the gospel. So that was a bit more of a less heavy-handed approach in terms of dealing with the native population. And it's the question is just sort of where you strike that balance, how much immigration is too much. And I guess the only answer I have is when the people who are being subject to the immigrants say enough.
Yeah, Dylan, you're spot on there. Hey, I think national identity and culture and stuff is, you know, there's, you know, faith, culture, national identity, and all of that. Those are all incredibly important things that sort of maintain people's sanity in a lot of times. And you know, there's this whole. So the liberals and the libertarians, because, you know, same thing. The degenerates, they basically punt this whole, you know, individual. You know, everyone's an individual and stuff, which is all horse shit. It's absolutely shit. I mean, come on, we all have some sort of groupthink and all of that, and it's just in us. It's just a human thing, and I think that's what helps us maintain our sanity. And that's why you'll find places that have very sort of strong national identities and stuff, their suicide rates are almost zero, because people have a reason for living. They understand that their culture and their family and everything else will live on. Remove that, and there's no reason for living. You just basically become an individual nihilist.
Yeah. No, that's certainly true, and you see it tied in with a lot of things, and substance abuse, just this sort of ne'er do well, just no reason to live kind of attitude. A lot of these poor, indigenous communities have. It's very sad. They're just kind of a downtrodden people. They're, I don't know. So, and that's unfortunately a bad side effect of immigration. Now, obviously, you have certain societies. I mean, the best question then is, how do you deal with that? Now, mass repatriations are probably not on the table,
No.
So now you got to try to find the best way to deal with it or mitigate the problems. So that's why I think in more multicultural societies, probably secessionism, or at the very least federalization of the existing polity is probably the best way to go. And then you allow for individual control of their own region. So even though you have a single country, there's no one at the top who's able to tell all the different minority groups what to do. And they don't have a say in what happens in the other province who does things differently, who has their own cultural identity.
Well, what about
balkanization?
Yeah, well, you see, the whole thing is that I personally, I think that was something that would be vitally important for a country when it comes to when they have a whole bunch of immigrants that are not assimilating or whatever. I say the best thing to do is to start sort of private sort of cultural groups and stuff. So things like let's say, for example, rampant immigration in the UK or something. And I would say that the best thing that would help those immigrants sort of assimilate and stuff would be, I don't know, cultural social groups. I don't know, something that sort of, because you have to. I don't know. You have to in some way, shape, or form. You have to assimilate to a culture. If you want to immigrate there, you have to assimilate. I'm sorry, you can't try and make the new country the old country.
Yeah,
you have
100% agree.
You've moved there for a better life because that country has given you the opportunity of a better life. The least you could do is understand and accept their culture.
Yeah, and I think it sort of depends on where you're going to. So for someone who's already culturally European, going to another country which isn't entirely foreign would probably be okay. It might be hard on your life, but your kids will more or less fit in within a generation or two. If you kind of come in with sort of a hard and fast rules that are counter to the host country that you're moving into. So let's say you are an Islamic fundamentalist, then you can't really expect to be fitted into that new society you're going into. Much the same way as if you are an Orthodox Christian monarchist or whatever, and you want to move to Saudi Arabia, you can't be expected to fit into that society just because it's too different, because the values are different, your goals are different, what you want society to be, what you want it to see it to become are frankly opposed. So, and in that sort of situation, I'm not exactly sure how you can assimilate. I mean, if I move to Japan, I will never be Japanese, essentially.
You'll never be accepted. The Japanese will never accept you as Japanese, ever.
Well,
Yeah.
this is interesting about this is the interesting thing about Japan. Okay, is that they are no. I think they are a very sort of secular state, so they're not really a super hyper religious country, but they do enforce their culture through their practices and stuff. So it's promoted. So things like I think what's in Japan, what's their main faith or religion there?
Shinto.
Shinto and
Shinto
Taoism
and stuff.
all sorts of
so
things.
all of that sort of stuff is promoted and all of that, but they're not very religious, but they're very sort of culturally religious, if that makes any sense.
No, sure.
Yeah,
And
no,
Japan
that's
are very good at maintaining their cultures.
And if you want to know of a country that's completely got closed borders, it's Japan.
yeah, no, Japan, South Korea, they don't let anybody in. Basically, the only way you could get in is if you marry a local, then they'll let you in. But that's
and then even your children and children's children and children's children and children's children's will never be accepted as Japanese.
Yeah, they're hectic over there.
Yeah, but yeah, it's got to be like third generation. So your kid will be a little weird, but if they marry a Japanese guy, then it's close enough that they'll be like, okay, you're Japanese now. So like your grandkid will be, but you will never be.
Yeah. But so I think what's also very important, specifically with regards to this sort of thing, is the fact that Dylan, you were talking about it earlier on, is for me something that stands out a lot is the fact that people are always going to move towards their cultural groups and stuff. So for example, if you have groups of, let's say, 100,000 immigrants out of 1 million people, okay, so that's 10%, okay, and these people have a specific culture. 100,000 people, or even 10,000 people, or even 1,000 people, is still enough to form communities around that group of people that share your same culture and your same beliefs and stuff.
Yeah. And
that'll grow, and that'll spread, and that'll eventually, become 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 1 million. You know what I mean? And they will not. I don't care what you say. They will not become individuals and just sort of, become empowered individuals and form their own groups and stuff. Utter horse shit. They're just going to carry on with the same cultures and the same stuff that they like and that they do. So this is the facts, and I don't get where this whole individualism nonsense comes from. That's totally against absolutely against human what's the word I'm looking for? Human nature.
Yeah. No, that's exactly the case. And even if they don't grow, if you got enough of them so that they don't, intermarry with the local populace and they sort of reproduce amongst their own, even if they don't increase in size, they'll, at the very least maintain themselves. I mean, you saw this happen in the Czech Republic, which had German minority for hundreds of years, and they never became Czech. They never.
The Sudeten Germans.
Yeah, exactly. They never became Czech. Same with the German minority in Russia. They never became Russian. There was enough of them there that they were able to sort of preserve their cultural identity. They liked being German, and they kept being German.
Perfect. So, another perfect example of that is the Boer population in Patagonia.
Yeah.
I mean, there was only 200 families that went there, and that was what is it, 1910? I think they went, or 1915. So
1902, around there.
So they've been there for about 100 odd years now, and they still have the same culture. They still speak Afrikaans. They still play concertinas. They still make koeksisters. They still make potjiekos. They still sing the same Afrikaans songs and stuff 100 years later.
Or just look
Spanish
at
country.
Yeah, or look at Chinese in Malaysia, or Jews anywhere in the world. They preserve their culture, their religion, and their identity and their heritage, and they might adopt the lingua franca.
Dylan, those people weren't empowered individuals. They weren't empowered enough. They weren't given enough freedom, bruh.
Yeah, I guess not. You know, I'm just a terrible racist who thinks people like having their own culture and languages. I guess I don't know. But hey, guys, sorry I gotta cut it short, but I gotta go to the Avengers right now. So
No stress, D-Dog.
sold out. It's sold out in Mitchell's Plain. That's how much people want to see this movie. So we're going to go to the promenade and get some popcorn and stuff. And you guys, I'll let you guys wrap up. But it's a great show, and I'll see you guys later.
Cool, D-Dog.
All right. Okay, Dylan.
Cheers.
Always great having you on.
Yeah,
thanks,
buddy.
man. Always a pleasure. Later.
Okay. Cheers, man.
Yeah. So, Russell, I guess it's just us two leftover racists over here, I guess, eh?
Yeah, we're just gonna wind. I think also, we haven't really got onto the South African discussion about it. Look, from my perspective, there's merit in the immigration into South Africa. There is some merit. However, our public services are completely overrun, and you've got a government that's incapable of actually managing the situation. Yet they still want open borders. To be honest with you, right now, even though immigration in the South African context, I don't really have a massive issue with, I would say for practical purposes, at least for a period, close the borders. Because we just can't manage the situation.
Well, yeah, we've got too much shit to sort out to have to worry about other
problems. We can't. Well, look, like I say, I mean, maybe it doesn't even matter if we close the borders or open them, because even if we so-called close them, we can't even guard the borders anyway. So it's that's also a problem. So whether you have open borders or not as policy, it doesn't matter. I think there's still going to be open borders practically.
Yeah, you can put all kinds of policy behind it, but how they really going to stop the problem is.
Well, I mean, like I say, I don't particularly. I'm for stability.
Well, I mean, Russell, no kind of policy is going to be able to help, because I'd wager that a majority of the immigrants coming into South Africa are just sort of wandering right across the border anyway. So,
yeah, well, this is the thing.
So there's nothing they can do. They can add as much policy as they want, and as much bureaucratic red tape as they want. They're not going to be able to stop the problem.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, the thing is, the government, all they can do is sit in parliament and write laws and think they're doing a good job and pat themselves on the back.
Yeah,
they're a bunch of losers. They can't actually do anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, we don't. The South African situation, I'm a bit 50-50 on. It's it's. I feel for the guy. Look, the immigrants that are coming into South Africa from other African countries are generally they're not on welfare. They're not on anything. They are generally trying to make a go of things, and generally, by and large, they are actually productive. Is what I stand to be corrected, but they are actually productive and contributing.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the oaks that are coming to South Africa have they've really been dealt a shit blow. I mean, they've really had it hard. I mean, I know a mate of mine who came over from Zim literally with the clothes on his back, and found a job, and this guy was a highly skilled mechanic in Zimbabwe, and he came over and with the clothes on his back. I mean, he came over legally, but he came with the clothes on his back, and he worked his ass off, and now he runs has his own little company and everything, and he's doing well for himself. He's a tax-paying citizen and everything. So those sort of, there are those situations that can add value, to massive amounts of value to your country. And I mean, don't get, people mustn't like I'm sure like a lot of the oaks will jump on the bandwagon and say, oh, you're just anti-immigration, you think immigrants are here to steal your jobs, kind of thing. That's not my view at all. My wife is here, she's an immigrant, or she's in South Africa, she's an immigrant, and she's a tax-paying citizen, she contributes to the economy and all of that, so I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem is this rampant, uncontrolled, unregulated, unwatched immigration, and it's just, yeah, it becomes a problem.
Interesting thing about South African immigration, which one needs to ask, first of all, is once eventually what will happen is these immigrants would become fully fledged citizens, being able to register to vote, being on the voters' roll. It would be interesting to see what their political swing would be. Who would they vote for? What type of party would they vote for?
Well, I mean, it doesn't really excite me, Russell, because the first sort of democratic elections since forever in Zimbabwe, and ZANU-PF still won the election by a whopping 68%. So,
yeah, well, look, no, but
I don't know. Huh?
That's not of the. You must remember that's not actually of the popular vote. That's of that is of the West. In Zimbabwe, they've got a Westminster system. Okay, and what has actually happened is that fewer seats are allocated to the urban areas, which are landslide non-ZANU-PF. The urban areas, Bulawayo, Harare, and a couple of the other smaller sort of medium-sized towns are anti-ZANU-PF, but they've got such control over the country that they set up that all the rural areas and the tribal trust lands and all those constituencies, there's more constituencies representing less people for ZANU-PF, and that's how they get 68% of the seats.
So the places that have a vested interest in keeping ZANU-PF in power are the sort of rural areas and stuff.
Correct. And they've got, if you look at the mappings of the, if I remember correctly, the mappings and how they're laid out of the Zimbabwe constituency map, more seats are allocated to rural areas than urban areas. Which is interesting because most of the population is in the urban areas now, I think.
It's interesting that what you mentioned and how you think that it might sort of affect or alter the political landscape in South Africa. That is quite an interesting point over there. How do you think it would play out?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't think. What I do know is that there's very little loyalty by, let's just take Zimbabweans, Mozambicans, Angolans. They form the biggest portion, in my opinion, of the African continental immigration into South Africa. They don't have any sort of affiliation whatsoever with the current political leadership of South Africa. I don't think they would be in any way attached to them in any sort of way.
Apart from policy, that wouldn't be like a sort of cultural attachment, which
there would be no heart attachment to the incumbent parties in South Africa.
Which makes up for. I mean, a lot of the people that vote for the ANC vote for them because they were like their liberators and stuff.
Yeah. I don't think if people have come to this country, I don't see this. I think they've basically given up on politicians being their liberators.
Yeah, because they come from absolute utter hellholes that have been ripped apart by politicians claiming to be.
Yeah, so they won't be loyal, is what I'm saying. They won't be loyal to a political party, any political party. Actually, they'll probably move around a lot. They won't be loyal. It won't be a matter of a rubber stamp as to where you put your vote. That's what I would think.
And also, I mean, a good point that that a lot of people make and stuff, a lot of the libertarians and stuff do make, is that at the moment, our biggest enemy in South Africa is the government, not immigrants. I mean,
no, absolutely. Yeah,
we don't at the moment in South Africa, our biggest fight is against, the government, and, is against people like the ANC and the EFF and all of these, tyrannical people that just want to, take away all your rights and make you a lemming to the state and a robot. So that is often made that the immigrants coming in trying to steal my land. Understand, the government is clearly trying to do that. So that is a good argument for immigration. I just don't think that it is that rampant immigration is culturally sustainable for a country. That's the only thing. And I mean, I do think that if we ever do get to a situation where we are able to fix South Africa politically, I do think that we need to tighten up on our border security.
Yeah, it will have to come at some point. At some point, it will have to come, yeah, even those that came to South Africa illegally or legally will want the border. Once somebody's here and made a go of it and got a vested interest in it, they want the borders closed. No matter where they are.
The thing is,
even if you were to take America, for instance, you were to take America, a first or second generation immigrant, for instance, that came legally or illegally, all right, but it's, they're going to want if say now an illegal immigrant is in the US and they now get given the right to stay, they're going to want the borders closed.
Oh yeah,
close it behind us. You know what I mean? I'm telling you now.
Well, that makes you wonder why. Why do you think that is?
Well, because they don't want to be left competing too much, you see.
You don't think it's because maybe they know what the situation is in the countries where they come from?
Well, that too. They know what's behind them coming through, But it's they don't want to have to. They once they're there, they want to. The resource-minded person would be, which people naturally are resource-minded. They would want the borders closed. Any legal immigrant to the US. I'm telling you now, if you had to ask them, I guarantee you 80% of them would say close, have strict borders, close the borders, or, you know what I mean, or enforce legal immigration.
Yeah, that's very true, huh? Hang on, sorry. But yeah, I think that that a lot of immigrants that have come from, let's use Mexico or Cuba, for example. I mean, in Florida, there's a ton of Cuban immigrants, and a lot of them, you see people like Bernie Sanders and stuff punting socialist ideas and all of that, and the immigrants are the first ones, like the Cuban immigrants and that are the first ones to talk up against that sort of thing, which is
correct.
Which is actually a plus, you know what I mean? Sometimes you need people from those hellhole countries to actually speak up and say, well, hang on, you don't understand what it is like living in a socialist country. I do. I came to the United States to live in a capitalist country, or to have my freedoms and stuff, and I'm not going to let that go, easily. So I think that's also a potentially good thing of having immigrants in your country, is you get another perspective, or you get to understand another perspective of how it is living under political tyranny and all of that. And that's what I think that's an advantage of immigration as well.
Correct. Absolutely.
But in a nutshell, I think we should close up and give some closing statements. Russell, you want to go ahead first, bro?
Yeah, look, immigration is fine. I mean, the thing is, countries will and at times need immigration managed, controlled. It's all fine. I don't have a major sort of issue with it. With regards to open borders, like I said before, you can have open borders, but then absolutely no public services, no social welfare, and no minimum wage laws. If you want to have just like an idea of, come through the passport, just stamp your passport, you can come here, work, everything. Complete open borders, no worries. Then people need to lose all their benefits, all their state-held benefits must go. sorry. If they want to keep their state benefits and public services, close the borders. It's simple as that.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. In a nutshell, I think that diversity can be a strength, but is diversity an absolute strength? I don't think so. I think it's important to protect your national identity as a country, because you got to understand is that national identity is what built your country. And if people want to come to your country and enjoy what you've built, they have to understand that they're guests in that country. And just like Dylan, he said that he understands that he's a guest in that country. Just like he said, you need to understand that you are a guest in that country. So diversity is not necessarily a strength. Mass immigration. So again, this is very important. Mass immigration, not normal immigration and stuff like Dylan wrote over here, definitely leads to division. It is, it's going to end up destroying certain aspects of your culture, and it's vitally important to preserve those. But like Russell said, immigration is not a problem, but you have to get rid of all of your social welfare and all of the welfare state in order to give it no incentives or no sort of free rides to immigrants that are coming through your borders, because you find that happens very, very often. So again, I just want to say I am pro-immigration, but it has to be legal, has to be done the right way. Myself and my wife, it took her over a year to even get a working visa to work in South Africa, and we've done that. It's another 2 or 3 years before she can actually get registered as a citizen or a permanent resident. And it takes time to do these things. And if you want to be in somewhere bad enough, you're going to want to do these things. And it's important to make sure that you do them and you do it the right way, so that shows that you are at least being respectful to the country that has you as a visitor.
Correct. I'm on board with that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be discussing I don't know, we haven't really discussed what the topic for next week's discussion is. I must apologize. I've been on holiday for the last 3 weeks. It's been fantastic, been all over the United States, but I've been sort of very preoccupied with a very busy holiday. So I haven't been able to get our trailers and post as much on Facebook and all of that, but we will be doing that very, very soon. Russell, you need to go ahead and share some of those YouTube videos with your friends and family over there, okay?
No, for sure, absolutely.
Stop yawning, man. You have a long day or what?
Yeah, hey, the run took it out of me a bit.
Yeah, shame. Cool. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, stay reactionary out there. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook post over there, or our Facebook page, sorry. Have a lovely day, and we'll see you all next week. Stay reactionary, because
God wills it.
God wills it.